This is the continuing coverage on the death of Pope Francis. I'm Ed Lingao.
And I'm Regina Lay. The Holy See has entered the period of Sede Vacante, or vacant seat, after Pope Francis died at the age of 88 on Easter Monday, April 21. So in the coming weeks, a new pontiff will be elected.
But before the conclave, that centuries-old tradition of choosing the next vicar of Christ, the Catholic Church mourns Francis, known for his humility and reformist vision. His passing marks the end of a papacy that redefined tradition and championed the marginalized. Here's a report.
Pope Francis, affectionately called Lolo Kiko by Filipinos, passed away on Monday, April 21 at his residence in Casa Santa Marta, Vatican City. Cardinal Kevin Farrell Camarlengo of the Apostolic Chamber made the announcement 2 hours after the Pope died at 7:35 a.m. According to Vatican Dr. Andrea Arcangeli, Pope Francis died from a stroke and irreversible heart failure. His death certificate also stated that the Pope had fallen into a coma before passing away. Born Jorge Mario Bergoglio in Buenos Aires, Argentina, he was elected as the 266th pontiff of the Roman Catholic Church on March 13, 2013, becoming the first pope from Latin America. The 88-year-old pontiff had recently spent 38 days at Rome's Gemelli Hospital, where he was treated for double pneumonia. His final public appearance took place on Easter Sunday, blessing thousands of faithful at St. Peter's Square. Reverend Father Ari Sison of Santa Rita de Cassia Parish described Pope Francis as a shepherd who transformed the papacy, leading with humility, mercy, and a deep concern for the marginalized.
As a priest, he set a different model of being a shepherd, and he showed what really matters, and it's he was especially close to the people. I was always thinking, what will he do on Easter Sunday? I think that was his goodbye to us, the people.
Pope Francis's funeral will break from the tradition, embracing simpler rites that reflect his lifelong commitment to humility. His body will not be placed on an elevated platform in St. Peter's Basilica during the public viewing. Instead of the customary 3 interlocking coffins made of oak, cypress, and lead, Pope Francis chose a single coffin made of wood and zinc. In 2023, Pope Francis decided he would not be buried in St. Peter's Basilica, but rather in Rome's Santa Maria Maggiore Basilica, close to his favorite icon of the Madonna. Father Gregory Gaston, rector of the Pontificio Collegio Filipino in Rome, confirmed the viewing for Pope Francis will begin on Wednesday, April 23.
The transfer of the Holy Father's body to St. Peter's Basilica for the homage of all the faithful may take place in the morning of Wednesday, April 23.
Francis was also called the People's Pope. In the dozen years that he led the Catholic Church, or starting 2013, Pope Francis followed the virtues of the saint he was named after. The story from Mobile Journal, Merriman Reyes.
For 12 years, Jorge Mario Bergoglio served as the head of the Catholic Church. Since his inception in 2013, he took on the name Pope Francis and was declared the People's Pope. Born December 17, 1936, still photograph of a young Bergoglio with family in Buenos Aires, Argentina, to an Italian immigrant couple. He was 21 years old when he developed severe pneumonia and part of his right lung was removed. In 1958, just as he finished his degree as a chemical technician, Bergoglio felt the call to serve the Lord. In that same year, he entered the novitiate of the Society of Jesus. And in 1960, he first took his oath as a Jesuit. The year that followed until 1963, he studied humanities and philosophy at San Miguel Seminary in Buenos Aires. Still photograph of a young Father Bergoglio giving Mass in 1969, was finally ordained a priest. June 27, 1992, he was appointed Auxiliary Bishop of Buenos Aires. And in 1998, became Archbishop. As one, Bergoglio became known for his simplicity and humility, no flashy cars, and his closeness to the needy. In 2001, Pope John Paul II declared promoted Bergoglio into the College of Cardinals. In 2013, when Pope Benedict XVI resigned due to illness, his fellow cardinals elected Bergoglio as the new leader of the church, the first from the Americas. the Jesuit order, and with the name Francis, in honor of Saint Francis of Assisi, whose values he mirrored throughout his lifetime. Mobile journalist Mary Monreyes, We Are One News.
President Bongbong Marcos expressed deep sorrow over the passing of Francis, calling him the best pope of his lifetime. Marcos Jr. said the Philippines joins the Catholic global community in mourning the loss of a spiritual leader who inspired through kindness and simplicity. He also praised the late pontiff for his humility and compassion, qualities that endeared him to millions, especially Filipinos who fondly called him Lolo Kiko. He added that Pope Francis's example brought many back to the Church and that his life was a testament to Christ-like love with a legacy that will continue to guide and uplift the world. For her part, VP Sara Duterte praised Francis as a humble and compassionate leader who brought the gospel to the faithful, especially the poor and the sick. She urged Filipinos to draw strength from the Pope's legacy and continue living out his message of mercy and service.
The world is also coming together to mourn the loss of Pope Francis, and here's the story.
From world leaders to faithful followers, the passing of Pope Francis has sparked a global outpouring of grief and remembrance. U.S. President Donald Trump extended his condolences, remembering Pope Francis with a message of rest and blessings to him and all who loved him. On X, previously known as Twitter, Trump announced that he will attend the Pope's funeral, accompanied by his wife Melania, who is a devout Catholic. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance, who was among the last leaders to meet the pontiff, offered his heartfelt condolences. Vance visited the Vatican with his family and exchanged Easter greetings with the Pope on Sunday, April 20. For his part, Britain's King Charles reflected on the Pope's final Easter greeting and the devotion he shared with both the Church and the world throughout his life. Russian President Vladimir Putin also offered his condolences. He remembered the Pope's role in promoting dialogue between the Russian Orthodox and Roman Catholic churches. Meantime, Argentina's President Javier Milei reminisced about his honor to have known Pope Francis. He also highlighted the wisdom and goodness the Pope exemplified despite the world's differences. For her part, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni shared that she had the privilege of receiving the Pope's friendship and advice, which continued to inspire her even during challenging times. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas also expressed deep sorrow, remembering Pope Francis as a loyal friend of the Palestinian people and a strong advocate for peace and justice. He recalls the Pope's visit to Bethlehem and his calls to end the conflict in Gaza. Meantime, Israeli President described the pontiff as a man of deep faith and boundless compassion.
All right, let's now bring in Father Gregory Gaston, rector of the Pontificio Collegio Filipino in Rome. Father Gaston, can you hear us okay? Welcome
Hello
to Storycon.
po, good afternoon to all of you.
Magandang hapon, Father. Thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon, Father. I want to take off first, Father, from your last interview with us, wherein you gave some details of the viewing, which will start the morning of April 23. I'm wondering if there's been any updates on that. Ano pa po yung alam natin at this point of how the day will take shape?
Okay, so as of now, we're still
This is the continuing coverage on the death of Pope Francis. I'm Ed Lingao.
And I'm Regina Lay. The Holy See has entered the period of Sede Vacante, or vacant seat, after Pope Francis died at the age of 88 on Easter Monday, April 21. So in the coming weeks, a new pontiff will be elected.
But before the conclave, that centuries-old tradition of choosing the next vicar of Christ, the Catholic Church mourns Francis, known for his humility and reformist vision. His passing marks the end of a papacy that redefined tradition and championed the marginalized. Here's a report.
Pope Francis, affectionately called Lolo Kiko by Filipinos, passed away on Monday, April 21 at his residence in Casa Santa Marta, Vatican City. Cardinal Kevin Farrell Camarlengo of the Apostolic Chamber made the announcement 2 hours after the Pope died at 7:35 a.m. According to Vatican Dr. Andrea Arcangeli, Pope Francis died from a stroke and irreversible heart failure. His death certificate also stated that the Pope had fallen into a coma before passing away. Born Jorge Mario Bergoglio in Buenos Aires, Argentina, he was elected as the 266th pontiff of the Roman Catholic Church on March 13, 2013, becoming the first pope from Latin America. The 88-year-old pontiff had recently spent 38 days at Rome's Gemelli Hospital, where he was treated for double pneumonia. His final public appearance took place on Easter Sunday, blessing thousands of faithful at St. Peter's Square. Reverend Father Ari Sison of Santa Rita de Cassia Parish described Pope Francis as a shepherd who transformed the papacy, leading with humility, mercy, and a deep concern for the marginalized.
As a priest, he set a different model of being a shepherd, and he showed what really matters, and it's he was especially close to the people. I was always thinking, what will he do on Easter Sunday? I think that was his goodbye to us, the people.
Pope Francis's funeral will break from the tradition, embracing simpler rites that reflect his lifelong commitment to humility. His body will not be placed on an elevated platform in St. Peter's Basilica during the public viewing. Instead of the customary 3 interlocking coffins made of oak, cypress, and lead, Pope Francis chose a single coffin made of wood and zinc. In 2023, Pope Francis decided he would not be buried in St. Peter's Basilica, but rather in Rome's Santa Maria Maggiore Basilica, close to his favorite icon of the Madonna. Father Gregory Gaston, rector of the Pontificio Collegio Filipino in Rome, confirmed the viewing for Pope Francis will begin on Wednesday, April 23.
The transfer of the Holy Father's body to St. Peter's Basilica for the homage of all the faithful may take place in the morning of Wednesday, April 23.
Francis was also called the People's Pope. In the dozen years that he led the Catholic Church, or starting 2013, Pope Francis followed the virtues of the saint he was named after. The story from Mobile Journal, Merimon Reyes.
For 12 years, Jorge Mario Bergoglio served as the head of the Catholic Church. Since his inception in 2013, he took on the name Pope Francis and was declared the People's Pope. Born December 17, 1936, still photograph of a young Bergoglio with family in Buenos Aires, Argentina to an Italian immigrant couple. He was 21 years old when he developed severe pneumonia and part of his right lung was removed. In 1958, just as he finished his degree as a chemical technician, Bergoglio felt the call to serve the Lord. In that same year, he entered the novitiate of the Society of Jesus. And in 1960, he first took his oath as a Jesuit. The year that followed until 1963, he studied humanities and philosophy at San Miguel Seminary in Buenos Aires. Still photograph of a young Father Bergoglio giving Mass in 1969, was finally ordained a priest. June 27, 1992, he was appointed Auxiliary Bishop of Buenos Aires. And in 1998, became Archbishop. As one, Bergoglio became known for his simplicity and humility. No flashy cars, and his closeness to the needy. In 2001, Pope John Paul II declared promoted Bergoglio into the College of Cardinals. In 2013, when Pope Benedict XVI resigned due to illness, his fellow cardinals elected Bergoglio as the new leader of the Church, the first from the Americas, the Jesuit order, and with the name Francis, in honor of Saint Francis of Assisi, whose values he mirrored throughout his lifetime. Mobile journalist Merimon Reyes, We Are. One News.
President Bongbong Marcos expressed deep sorrow over the passing of Francis, calling him the best pope of his lifetime. Marcos Jr. said the Philippines joins the Catholic global community in mourning the loss of a spiritual leader who inspired through kindness and simplicity. He also praised the late pontiff for his humility and compassion, qualities that endeared him to millions, especially Filipinos who fondly called him Lolo Kiko. He added that Pope Francis's example brought many back to the Church and that his life was a testament to Christ-like love with a legacy that will continue to guide and uplift the world. For her part, VP Sara Duterte praised Francis as a humble and compassionate leader who brought the gospel to the faithful, especially the poor and the sick. She urged Filipinos to draw strength from the Pope's legacy and continue living out his message of mercy and service.
The world is also coming together to mourn the loss of Pope Francis, and here's the story.
From world leaders to faithful followers, the passing of Pope Francis has sparked a global outpouring of grief and remembrance. U.S. President Donald Trump extended his condolences, remembering Pope Francis with a message of rest and blessings to him and all who loved him. On X, previously known as Twitter, Trump announced that he will attend the Pope's funeral, accompanied by his wife Melania, who is a devout Catholic. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance, who was among the last leaders to meet the pontiff, offered his heartfelt condolences. Vance visited the Vatican with his family and exchanged Easter greetings with the Pope on Sunday, April 20. For his part, Britain's King Charles reflected on the Pope's final Easter greeting and the devotion he shared with both the Church and the world throughout his life. Russian President Vladimir Putin also offered his condolences. He remembered the Pope's role in promoting dialogue between the Russian Orthodox and Roman Catholic churches. Meantime, Argentina's President Javier Milei reminisced about his honor to have known Pope Francis. He also highlighted the wisdom and goodness the Pope exemplified despite the world's differences. For her part, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni shared that she had the privilege of receiving the Pope's friendship and advice, which continued to inspire her even during challenging times. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas also expressed deep sorrow, remembering Pope Francis as a loyal friend of the Palestinian people and a strong advocate for peace and justice. He recalls the Pope's visit to Bethlehem and his calls to end the conflict in Gaza. Meantime, Israeli President described the pontiff as a man of deep faith and boundless compassion.
All right, let's now bring in Father Gregory Gaston, rector of the Pontificio Collegio Filipino in Rome. Father Gaston, can you hear us okay? Welcome
Hello
to
po,
Storycon.
good afternoon to all of you.
Magandang hapon, Father. Thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon, Father. I want to take off first, Father, from your last interview with us, wherein you gave some details of the viewing, which will start the morning of April 23. I'm wondering if there's been any updates on that. Ano po yung alam natin at this point of how the day will take shape?
Okay, so as of now, we're still expecting, probably within a few hours or maybe minutes even, since it's still morning here in Rome. It's 9:11 in the morning, so we're still waiting for the Vatican updates, and they would surely be indicating to us the procedures, logistics regarding the wake and regarding the burial itself, because many people will be coming, not only pilgrims, but also heads of states and the leaders of the different religious communities, whether Catholics or non-Catholics, will be paying homage to our dear Pope Francis. So we're still waiting for the updates.
But Father, we also understand that the Pope had left some instructions on how he would want the ceremony to be held. But before you go there, could you give us first an idea of how it has always been traditionally? Whenever a Pope dies, I understand there are certain traditions that are done in the way, for example, the viewing is done or the wake is done, and so on down the line. Could you begin with that first? How was it traditionally? I understand there were 3 coffins, I think.
Yeah. Yes, I think I'm so happy and blessed to have been here during when Pope John Paul II died, and also Pope Benedict when he resigned, and when he died, I was here assigned at the Vatican, and then later here at Collegio Filipino. So there's a lot of tradition. I think it was Pope John Paul II who sort of made the latest updates, to the tradition, indicating the way the coffins, for example, I think 3 coffins, one inside the other, wood and then tin and then some other metal. And then in the case of Pope John Paul II, he was buried in the grottos, we call it the underground, the original level of St. Peter's Basilica of the 4th century, 5th century level. He was there, but then many people were coming to visit him, so he was brought up to the current place where he is now, right beside the chapel of the Pietà. Upon entry to the Basilica, to the right, the first chapel is the Pietà, and the second chapel is the tomb of Pope John Paul II. And then Pope Benedict, when he died, he was placed there in that place, tomb vacated by Pope John Paul II. So the ceremonies, they started actually yesterday after the Pope died, but in the morning, 7:35, but he was officially declared or ascertained to be dead at 8 o'clock in the evening. So the doctors were there, and also some of the cardinals, Cardinal Farrell as the Camerlengo, and then also some other staff. And I think last night he was already placed in a coffin.
And this coffin is a single coffin made of wood and zinc as per his last will. And he also decided, Pope Francis also decided that he will not be buried in the St. Peter's Basilica as per tradition, but rather at the Santa Maria Maggiore Basilica, which is close to his favorite Madonna icon where he often went to pray. Pag ganitong may mga last will and last wishes, Father, does the church adhere to all of it, or meron parang you have to mix it a little bit with tradition, or do they abide by every single last wish?
Okay. So as I mentioned earlier, Pope John Paul II laid down specifics and instructions regarding the death of the Pope. And of course, I think that would serve as a guideline in case the Pope doesn't indicate otherwise or doesn't indicate any other additions or difference. But in this case, Pope Francis willed that he wanted that. So, and then the testament has been published. It's in the Vatican website and, of course, circulating already, I suppose. So in the testament, he indicated the kind of coffin and that he would be there at Santa Maria Maggiore, St. Mary Major, because even he has been manifesting his devotion to Our Lady even the day after he was elected. When he was elected, he announced that he would be going on a pilgrimage to a Marian shrine, and that was the following day. He suddenly appeared at St. Mary Major's without any publicity. He was just there in a normal car, as you also mentioned, instead of a high-end vehicle for heads of states. He wanted to have a mid-sized car, normal car here in Italy, the Fiat car. So, and then he was there, and then he even went back to the residence where he had stayed earlier, where he used to stay whenever he would come to Rome. He was there just before the conclave, and he went back after St. Mary Major the following day after his election to pay his bills, because he thought that he would be coming back after the elections, but then he ended up inside the Vatican after the elections. So he wants to be buried there in St. Mary Major's. That was his first pilgrimage as a pope, and then, well, symbolically also his last pilgrimage, now that his body will be brought from St. Peter's to St. Mary Major.
So, Father, there is no hard and fast rule as far as these matters are concerned. I mean, do you mean that the Pope has the prerogative to change the rules as he wants as you go along?
Yes. So technically, because even in the Code of Canon Law, that would be like the laws of the Church, the Pope can make any decision. He is the Supreme Pontiff, and he can make any decision, and nobody could even go against him, whatever he wants. But of course, since he is no longer Pope, he is dead, technically, the next pope could change. If, for example, he says that, oh, the pope deserves a high place of honor, then we put him somewhere else, more accessible to the people, more visible, etc. Then the next pope could do that. But I'm sure he would respect Pope Francis's
pwedeng
desire.
ganon? Pwede mo overrule the last will? Pwede mo overrule ng next pope? I mean,
I
technically.
suppose so, kasi ano naman siya kasi kumbaga, to give him maybe a little more honor or whatever, no? Or ewan ko, baka later on kung mag-decide, no? For example, in the case of John Paul II, doon siya dati, he was in a tomb downstairs in the basement, but then many people would come to him, so the crowd could not be accommodated, so he was brought up. So we'll never know. For example, if many people would start invading St. Mary Major, and then the building could no longer contain the crowd, then maybe he could also be transferred, depende naman.
But I guess for now they're gonna try to
to the wishes.
To be faithful to the wishes of Pope Francis. Father, I also noticed that in your previous interview with us, you said during the Sede Vacante, which is right now, which is that the vacant seat, the seat has been declared vacant, all the cardinals are considered resigned. Is that correct? Could you expound on that, please?
Yes, that's true. No? There's also an indication that whenever the Pope resigns or dies, the cardinals, the heads of the Vatican offices. So not all the cardinals. So for example, Cardinal Advincula, Cardinal Amo David, they're in Manila, Caloocan, they continue to be the cardinals, the bishops of their own places. But the ones appointed by the Pope here are considered resigned. So all the heads of for example, mission territories, so Cardinal Tagle, or the cardinal in charge of the religious, of the priests, of the families and lay people, all these cardinals are considered resigned, but they all have their secretaries, the second in command within their office, so their offices continue their day-to-day operations, their day-to-day commitments and missions.
So they resign their offices, but not their positions as cardinals.
Yes, so they maintain their title as cardinals, but they no longer go to the office, for example.
Parang courtesy resignation
in government, in government.
Exactly, yeah. Parang coterminous with the Pope.
I was just going to ask about Cardinal Tagle because he was appointed
the dicastery of
the evangelization, the congregation, the head of the congregation for evangelization of the people. So at this point in time, he's considered resigned from that office. Pero cardinal pa rin siya. Okay. Okay.
Father, balik ko lang, something you mentioned a while ago, some details that you mentioned a while ago, like the Pope being so simple, he would ride the bus along with the other cardinals instead of riding his own SUV. He would stay in what I suppose you might call it a hotel of sorts for the cardinals whenever they have to visit or whenever there's a conclave. So that's something that marked this particular Pope, his simplicity, his being like one of us. But I'm also wondering how that came across to some of the other officials of the church. I mean, to us regular people, it's a very heartening thing to hear something like that. But I'm wondering how it comes across to other people who are more traditional, who are more traditionalists, who may want to have some sort of a separation of sorts between, because of course it is a hierarchical institution. And there are some people who would want, there are some officials who may want to maintain that hierarchy of sorts. So I'm wondering how that came across to other officials in the church.
Yeah, well, of course, each one would have his own mind, would have his own exposure and then preferences as well. No? So, for example, maybe a certain distance would also be necessary. No? For example, Pope Francis, he stays there at the house. It's called Casa Santa Marta, and that is where the cardinal electors would be staying. So the residents there throughout the year, normally they are the priests who are assigned to the Secretary of State or to the different offices in the Vatican, about 100, I don't know exactly, maybe 180, maybe 200, the capacity. No? And it was built by Pope John Paul II because earlier, what the cardinals would do is they would be housed in the old buildings of the, I think, near the Vatican museums. It's connected to the Vatican Library, Vatican Archives. So imagine the cardinals camping, literally, almost. They would put beds and then makeshift toilets along the big corridors of the museum, of the library. So they would set up like tents or divisions, all temporary, just to house the 120 voting cardinals and the other cardinals prior to the votation itself in that kind of situation. So Pope John Paul II, I think he was able to find a benefactor who built that residence, current residence. So as of now, the monsignors, the priests assigned to the Vatican and who stay at Casa Santa Marta, they have to evacuate. As of now, I think they're now moving their things, finding temporary housing for maybe a month or a few weeks. And that way, that would allow the cardinals to enter and to be there during the conclave. So Pope Francis chose to be in that house, in that residence, instead of what we call the papal apartments. Although technically, when we say apartment, well, our Filipino OFWs, they live in apartments. The usual people, they live in apartments. The papal apartments were only actually a room, a bedroom for the Pope, not that big, and then a studio where he would write his documents, and then followed by a chapel, and then a library. So that would be the papal apartment. Is that really that grandiose?
Yeah, we saw videos of the Camerlengos, the Cardinal Kevin Farrell, sealing the doors of the apartment of Pope Francis with a red ribbon. What's the significance of that, Father?
Okay, so it's a tradition also, to make sure that the things inside remain as they are, because of course, for the sake of history, for the sake of the archives, they would like to preserve the room as it was left by the Pope. And that way, maybe later on, they would be able to maybe catalog, of course, they have started that already, but just in case, they need to study a little more exactly what the Pope had there, and maybe some other documents that he has left, etc. So it's more for the, I would say, filing purposes, and also it's part of the tradition to seal the room with wax. I think normally it's a wax seal to hold the ribbon as well.
Sealed talaga siya.
But it's only temporary, Father, so there will be an inventory of sorts, after which I suppose they will have to clear the room.
Yes. And then after that, when everything is cleared, there is a new Pope, etc., then I'm sure that room will be back to normal. I don't know if the new Pope will be staying there or if he would prefer to go back to the papal apartments, to the papal rooms, then that would be also an option.
Father, we're joined by the editor-in-chief of the Philippine Star on Zoom. Si Ami Pamintuan also joins us right now. Ami,
let's just bring her in.
Are you there?
Hello po, Ami.
Ami, nakamute ka ata. I think you're muted.
Okay, let's. Well, Ami will try to jump in when she can. But Father, let's talk about the conclave now, since you've mentioned the new Pope. So at this point in time, we know that the new Pope will be chosen by the College of Cardinals, which is the most senior leadership of the Catholic Church. We know at this point that there are more than 250 cardinals from over 90 countries, pero ang eligible lang to vote would be at least 135. And at least 108 of those were appointed by Pope Francis in the last 10 years, in keeping with his approach to make a more inclusive church. Talk us through when you expect this to kick off, because we know it's 15 to 20 days after the period of mourning. Is that correct?
That's correct. 15 to 20 days. I think we will get a glimpse of the logistics and the timeframes this morning, hopefully, when the Vatican document would come out. But it's 15 to 21 days, period of mourning, period of logistics, because they also have to fix the Casa Santa Marta. Imagine they would have to seal literally all the windows so they cannot be opened, and the cardinals could not communicate with the outside world. And then I was here when Pope John Paul II died, and I was assigned at the Vatican, so I also accompanied the Cardinal, who was an elector at the time, the head of our office, Cardinal Lopez Trujillo, who also visited Manila once for the World Meeting of Families. Anyway, the cardinals would enter through the normal entrance, the lobby. However, their luggages were sent to the garage entry, and there they were screened, the luggages. And the cardinals themselves, they entered through a metal detector in the main lobby to make sure that there are no means of communications, no laptops, no cell phones. Why? So that they could focus. They could focus the discussions among themselves and not have outside communication. So all this logistics, that 15 to 21 days, and then that would be when, after which the cardinals will be summoned to Rome, meaning they'll start to come officially after about the 1 or 2 weeks, or 2 or 3 weeks. And the first thing that they will be doing is a week of retreat, of prayer, reflection, getting to know each other. As you said, no, Pope Francis appointed cardinals from all over the world, even the tiniest countries, Brunei, Papua New Guinea, in terms of Catholic population, because Pope Francis wanted to hear also not only from majority Catholic countries, big Catholic countries, but from all over the world, because the Church serves not only Catholics, but everybody to the extent possible. So 1 week of this prayer reflection, after which, by the way, in this first week, all the cardinals are invited. So whoever of the 250 could come may join the discussions, also to get a feel of what kind of new pope, the Church and the world needs today. And after that would be the election proper, normally on a Monday afternoon, one election, and then Tuesdays onwards, 2 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, but only the 135 voting cardinals, meaning below 80 years old.
Let's bring in Ami. I think Ami's audio is now fixed. Ami?
Father.
There you
Hi,
are.
Father. Good afternoon. Condolence
Hello po, Ami.
po
Good
sa
afternoon.
inyo at sa ating lahat. You talk about what kind of pope we will be seeing in the coming weeks. Ano yan ang speculation ngayon eh. Tutuloy kaya yung reformist path na kinuha ni Pope Francis o babalik tayo sa traditional kasi malaking pushback, no? Everybody's asking about it. I know you don't have a crystal ball, pero kayo, anong sense nyo? Within the church, insider kayo dyan. Ano kaya ang more likely mangyayari?
Oh, thank you so much, Ami. I would say that all the popes, they have a single mission to carry out Jesus's commandment of love, loving God above all things and loving our neighbors as ourselves, expressed in the different historical contexts. So, for example, in the early centuries, wala pa naman Catholic countries, wala pa naman mga missionaries, so they had a different way of life. Or maybe more recently, First World War, Second World War, wala pa naman mga technology noon, wala pa itong mga social media, wala pa. So, iba yung mga situation. And then Pope Francis, is so blessed. And we are so blessed because he was able to use social media with all his advisors at the same time, sending out the messages, and also even in the lately, in the past few years, even going into artificial intelligence. I think the Vatican is one of the most well-studied document regarding artificial intelligence when it comes to the dignity of the human person, respecting life, respecting the human nature, and so on. So Pope Francis has been progressive in this way, maybe in the same way as the other popes were progressive during their times. Although laid back pa nga yung progress doon, iba naman. So for example, I think Pius the 11th, he was very progressive against the Nazis. And he even wrote a letter with burning hearts in German with Brennenden Sorge, na nilagay sa mga tabernacles doon sa Germany, and they were read at the same time on a Sunday morning in all the masses against Nazism. So ganun ka-progressive si Pope doon. And then we could also say that since all the popes would simply relay the message of love, so si Pope Francis, he goes to the poor and to the abandoned, to the sick, which was exactly what Jesus also did. So kumbaga, we could also say that he's very traditional si Pope Francis. Kasi 2,000-year tradition, no? Yan, si Jesus mismo nagsimula, patuloy si Pope Francis. But of course, very progressive kasi iba nga yung situation ngayon if we compare with the past.
So it's really hard to
Well, yung
tell.
perception sa kanya, Father, mas loving tong Pope na to. Yun ang perception ng mga tao, is so inclusive, no, he's so compassionate.
More
Parang yung religion
progressive.
naging more merciful. Ang tingin
Okay.
ko, eto, mahal ako na itong Pope na to, mahal ako na simbahan. And I know a lot of lapsed Catholics return to the fold because of him
Yes, totoo po yan, no?
Matutuloy ba yun sa susunod, sa mga in the coming weeks? Matutuloy ba yung gano'n?
Ayan, I'm sure matutuloy, no? Kasi in the same way, for example, si Pope Francis, no? As I mentioned earlier, the same message of love, of joy, of peace, of justice, lahat yan, no? In the case of Pope Francis, he even went all the way, for example, sa ecology, sa nature, no? He expressed closeness with nature, even the name itself, Francis, Saint Francis of Assisi, brother sun, sister moon, nature na nature si Pope Francis. In the same way si Saint Francis of Assisi, ganun din. Well, nung time nila Pope John Paul, time nila Pope Benedict, maybe they had some other focuses, for example, sa doctrinal part. Mga scholars yon si Pope John Paul, mga writers yan, no? Si Pope Benedict, ang haba ng kanyang collected works, ilang volumes yun, thousands and thousands of pages, na hindi lang yung official as a Pope, but even as a theologian before becoming Pope, no? Ang dami niya talagang nasulat. But always the same goal, to bring Jesus's love to all. In the case of John Paul, in the case of Pope Benedict, maybe from a doctrinal perspective, promoting the human person, no? And even reaching out to the other religions, sila grabe din, no? Kumbaga, very progressive din yung kanilang taste. And I hope that after Pope Francis, patuloy, no? Patuloy lahat ito ng momentum created by Pope Francis and even of the prior popes.
Father Gaston,
I think we lost
Nag-mute.
we
audio.
lost his audio.
Nag-mute lang yung audio.
Regarding
there you go.
na talagang no? Hopefully,
Oo.
patuloy.
I mean, of course, every pope is going to come back to the Christ's teachings and will preach about love and mercy and kindness and goodness. Pero I think the reason also why Pope Francis was being seen as a more inclusive, more progressive, more liberal pope was because of some of the things that he said in the past. For instance, he was famous for saying that, homosexuality is not a crime, right? If somebody is homosexual but is seeking God, then who am I to judge him, right? And then he also embraced migrants. He spoke up on behalf of the plight of migrants around the world. Tapos, he's also famous for acknowledging the sexual abuses of the church. So I guess that's why, in general, he's being seen as the more progressive one amongst the line.
I would say totoo yan, no? But I would say that thanks also to the groundwork laid down by Pope John Paul. For example, yung sexual abuse during the time of Pope John Paul, talagang pinush niya rin nun. At during the Jubilee year, di ba, he asked pardon, no, for the sins of the members of the church, si Pope John Paul. At doon nagsimula si Cardinal Ratzinger at the time na naging Pope Benedict. Siya yung talagang pinaaral ni Pope Francis regarding the sexual abuses. At nagkalabasan na at that time. At maganda, nung time naman ni Pope Francis ay talagang pinursige niya. And of all the institutions all over the world, I think ang Catholic Church ang nakapagplastada na kumbaga ng mga procedures, ng mga processes, lahat yan, no? At pinipursue talaga ng simbahan kasi nga out of service to all. Even Pope Francis, no, na ganito yung kanyang napagaganda kasi very progressive, very liberal. No? Although at the same time, he did not change anything sa teachings ng simbahan. No? So ganun pa rin, expressed in a different way. And even na talagang napakaganda ng impact sa mga tao.
Walter, maybe you could give some clarity there. Because like you said, wala naman siyang binago in terms of the teachings or the doctrine of the church. But at the same time, he also spoke very, very openly about embracing those who may not necessarily be following closely or hewing to the teachings of the church.
Yeah.
So could you give us a bit of clarity, or maybe the word is nuancing. Ano yung tamang nuancing, for example, sa sinabi ng Papa pagdating sa things like divorce, for example. I remember there was a time na parang nagkakabanggaan yung Santo Papa with some American cardinals or bishops with regard to whether to give communion to divorcees because they are, in effect, at least as far as church teaching is concerned, committing adultery. So ano po yung tamang nuancing? How should we understand what the Pope said during that time?
And before you answer that, Father, I'm just gonna call in the video. We now have the video of the Pope lying in the coffin. This is just broken.
Coming from Vatican.
Ito na. This is the wooden coffin that we've been talking about. That he's been placed in on his own wishes instead of the traditional na three interlinked coffins made of oaks, cypress, and lead and other materials. Pope Francis had requested one single simple wooden coffin made of wood and zinc. So we're seeing the first pictures out of the Vatican of the Pope lying in state in the coffin. And he also requested that he not be raised on the platform, on
the catafalque.
The catafalque, right? So he just wanted a very simple setup. Coming back to Father Greg, please go ahead.
Ayan, so thank you so much. Napakaganda. In the case of the teachings, well, maintaining the same teachings, but even his motto, which is choosing eligendo et misereando, being chosen and being given mercy. So ganun din tayong lahat, no? We are chosen by God and given mercy. That means those who are in technically or canonically, no, or legally sa simbahan are not in a correct situation, na sabi niya nga yung mga example na divorce and remarried, na mga technically same-sex unions, mga ganon. Maintaining the same teachings na that is not what it is supposed to be. Yung approach ni Pope Francis, napakaganda, and in a way talagang medyo bago nga, no? Kasi at least in the outward expression, ganun pa rin, no? All of us are chosen without any exception. All the people are chosen, not only Catholics, even the non-Catholics. We are all chosen by God, and God shows mercy on us. So lahat din tayo may kasalanan, lahat din tayo na may pagkakamali, but to all of us, God is merciful. Kaya nung opening ng Jubilee door, sabi niya, we can always come back to Him. We can always come back to Him. And Jubilee door, and that door, you don't even have to push it open. You don't even have to knock. Kasi bukas na bukas yung pintuan yun. So in whatever situation we are, yung maliliit o malalaki natin nagagawa every day, or in a continuous way, no, in a given situation na canonically sa canon law ng simbahan, hindi dapat. Si Pope Francis, God is still merciful. But it doesn't mean, never sinabi ni Pope na, okay lang yan, manatili kayo dyan. Kumbaga, wait tayo, hintay tayo, be very patient. The church has to be very patient. We cannot condemn people. We should not condemn people. But we continue to pray and to facilitate. So for example, itong sa divorce and remarried, si Pope Francis, talagang ginawa niyang mas madali, mas simple ngayon. Yung kung may grounds for nullity. Halimbawa, na-force pala yung marriage, halimbawa, wala naman palang marriage in the first place. Kaya napadali yung investigations, napadali yung process na kung may grounds pala, then maghiwalay sila. Kung wala talagang grounds, then hindi pa rin. So kumaga, more mercy in the sense na more patience, although nandun pa rin yung end goal natin.
So the Pope basically was not, Father, tell me if I'm getting this right, the Pope was basically not changing the interpretation of whether something is right or wrong depending on the church doctrine, but it was more like he was choosing to keep the door wide open instead of threatening to shut the door.
Exactly, no? And he was in a way, baka hindi naman directly sinabi, kundi he was implying na it is wrong to simply condemn people. Kasi Ganun we cannot condemn them. No, we have to pray for changes, and it has happened so many times, no, na after some time naayos naman pala yung situation, then okay, no, maganda.
Pero yun nga ang tanong ngayon, Father. Now that he has passed away, marorol ba kaya yung mga reforms niya? Halimbawa, yung remarried and divorced people, can they continue receiving communion? Yung same-sex couples, can they continue receiving blessings from the church? Yung ganyang mga tanong ngayon ang and kaya binabantayan mabuti kung yung succession, kung sino yung mananalo. Because we understand malakas din ang pushback ng traditionalists in the church. Marami din siyang critics within the church, no? So tatanong nga ang mga tao ngayon, ano kaya, saan ba papunta yung hangin ngayon sa Catholic Church?
Oo, napakagandang observation, Ami. So, ayun, no, kasi yung teachings kasi ng simbahan talagang hindi mapapalitan. Maybe yung approach.
Yes, hindi mapapalitan siya.
Oo, yung same-sex couples, yung binibless doon, yung person, halimbawa may dumating sa akin na same-sex couple, okay, I can bless you as persons individually or maybe with many other people, i-bless ko kayo. Although yung hindi ko pwedeng gawin, at yan din ang talaga, no, yung nuance na tinatawag natin, yung hindi ko pwedeng gawin ay i-bless ko silang dalawa as a couple. And then sabihin ko, okay, maganda yung pagsasama niyo. Hindi naman pwede. Although yung i-bless ko lahat ng tao, kahit sino, even non-Catholics, pwede ko i-bless. No? Even objects, di ba, mga rosary, pwede naman natin i-bless. So anyone, we can bless anyone. Although, pag halimbawa may lumapit sa akin na may gagawin akong masama, i-bless mo ako, hindi ko naman pwedeng gawin yan. So kumbaga, may nuance pa rin. No? And then, hopefully, probably, I'm sure in the same way na si Pope Francis, he built on the momentum of Pope John Paul II, of the Second Vatican Council, actually, noong time ni Pope John the 23rd, Pope Paul VI, Pope John Paul I, na 1 month lang siya, and John Paul II, Pope Benedict, kung baga pa-momentum, and most probably, surely, yung next Pope will also build on the momentum of Pope Francis and all the other popes.
And the other side of it kasi is each leadership change is a reflection of the times that we're living in, right? So, for instance, the Philippines still is a predominantly Catholic country, and if I recall correctly, it is still growing. The membership, can we call it membership? The
faithful.
The faithful. The percentage.
Sounds like a library card.
Kaya, the percentage of the faithful in Asia is still growing, pero in other parts of the world, it's fast shrinking. So, for example, in the US, only 19% now identify as Catholic. So, parang there's also that tension of whether, okay, I remember when Pope Francis was elected, there was a big push to grow the faithful in other parts of the world that had traditionally been overlooked. So now the question is also, okay, in Europe, in the US, in the more advanced economies, parang medyo Catholicism is losing ground a bit. Do they then focus on that, right? As opposed to Asia, Africa, where Catholicism still has a deep roots?
Ayan po, magandang din observation. No? Marami kasing mga countries, for example, dito sa Europe, no, yung mga seminarians, kumukonte. So problema nila, anong gagawin sa mga building, sa mga seminaries, sa mga library. Although pag pumunta ka naman sa Africa, problema nila, saan ipapatulugin yung seminarians kasi napakarami. So, yun naman ang problema nila doon. So, and then may mga little arrangements with the dioceses dito sa Italy, for example, to welcome yung mga galing sa Africa, dito magti-training as seminarians, and then pag naging pare, dito din mag-serve ng konti, although they still belong to their diocese in Africa and they can go back anytime. But, kumbaga, because of technology, and ito na-push din ni Pope Francis, no, na napakadali na ng communication, napakadali na ng travel. Kaya in a way, changing, as you said, no? Changing talaga yung face ng simbahan. Meanwhile, marami ding mga good signs. For example, just last 2 weeks ago, nag-meeting kami, mga rectors, and the one from the English College was telling us na may pinadala nga sa amin na yung link na doon sa England, ayan, dumadami yung Catholics, dumadami yung baptisms, dumadami din yung mga pari, no? So may even sa US, for example, 75% ng mga nagpapari ngayon are young professionals. So may mga parts din na medyo dumadami. So patuloy lang tayo sa ating pagdasal.
Okay.
Father, sa Pilipinas, kumusta yung church? Is it growing? Is it static? Is it shrinking?
I think sa Philippines, we are maintaining, kasi sa ibang diocese, we get about 8 priests, 10 new priests every year. Sa iba naman, 2, 3, 5, no? So depende naman sa area. And then, yung isang consideration din is yung mga lay organizations. Kasi a lot na ginagawa dati ng mga pari, ng mga madre, pwede naman yung mga lay people, even reaching out to the poor, mga services, gano'n, no? Mas magaling pa nga kayo dyan, no? Pwede kaya magturo ng algebra. Dati, padre, madre, nagtuturo ng mathematics. Pwede naman talaga lay yan, so that the priest, we can focus sa sacraments, confession, studying. Yan din ginagawa namin dito sa Colegio Filipino, is to ay tahanan. Residents ng ating kaparian, pinapadala for further training, including further studies. Before we became priests, we had to take up a bachelor in philosophy, 4 years, theology masters, another 4 years, and then 1 year na exposure, parish, so 9 years after ng high school. In my case, I was in second year medicine, kaya 5 years na tapos kong philosophy and theology. And then, dito yung pinapadala, another round of master's, licentiate, doctorate, at least 2 years, 4 years, 5 years. So, palalim. Dito naman sa Colegio Filipino, actually, tumataas yung population natin. No, from 30 plus, naging 40 plus, ngayon ay 56 tayo na mga pari dito. So hopefully, madadagdagan pa yung mga pari natin dito para pag-uwi, kami naman magtuturo sa mga seminarian, sa mga future na mga pari.
Okay. We'll leave that there for now. Thank you so much for your time and your patience, especially since nakatayo po kayo the whole time. Thank you so much, Father Gregory Gaston, Rector of the Pontificio Collegio Filipino in Rome.
Thank you, Father.
Maraming
Thank you,
salamat.
Father.
Thank you, Father.
Thank you.
Grazie. Tama ba yun?
Tama. Grazie mille.
Grazie.
Grazie mille. Again, Francis served 12 years as Pope. Let's now look back at the legacy he built in this report by News 5 correspondent Brian Basa.
March 13, 2013, the beginning of Pope Francis's leadership. A pope with a modern and progressive vision for the Catholic Church. He was known for his compassion for the poor and promotion of peace, which is why he is loved by Catholics around the world. One of the Pope's main goals was to help the poor and oppressed. He has also devoted time to pray for the end of the ongoing war between Ukraine and Russia and the war between Israel and Hamas. The pontiff also made time to meet with world leaders to call for peace, justice, and the rights of migrants. During his leadership, Pope Francis strengthened dialogue with other religions. He promoted cooperation and mutual respect despite differences in beliefs. He is also known for his message of forgiveness, mercy, and humility. While reinforcing the traditional doctrine of the Church, his perspective on the controversial issue of divorce was more progressive. According to the Pope, sometimes it's morally necessary for a couple to separate in order to protect their children. His statements regarding the LGBTQIA+ community was also praised by many.
Persone gay e cerca il Signore e ha buona volontà, ma chi sono io per giudicarla?
Pope Francis also gave attention to environmental issues and how to protect the earth. For him, climate change is a moral issue that the Church should address. In over a decade of Pope Francis's leadership, he has become one of the most influential leaders in history. For News 5, I'm Brian Basa, and we are One News.
And at this point, pumunta naman tayo sa Maynila. Quiapo Church held a mass to honor Pope Francis. For updates, we have mobile journalist Evan Trinque. Evan, anong sitwasyon ngayon dyan?
Bok, naka-display sa altar dito sa Minor Basilica and National Shrine of Jesus Nazareno sa Quiapo ang larawan ni Pope Francis bilang paggunita at pagbibigay pugay sa yumaong pinuno ng simbahang Katoliko. Makikita sa harapan ng altar ang larawan ni Pope Francis na napapalibutan ng kulay lilang tela, sinisimbolo ng pagluksa para sa mga pumanaw sa bayan ng pag-aalay ng panalangin pinatugtog ang kampana ng simbahan bilang pangikisa sa panawagan ni CBC President Bishop Pablo Cardinal Virgilio David. Nagkaroon din ng ilang minutong katahimikan at pagbabasbas para sa larawan ng Santo Papa gabi ng kahapon. Pansamantalang binago rin ang bahagi ng panalangin ng bayan upang ialay ito para sa yumaong Santo Papa at idinagdag ang mga katagang naway makamtan ang walang hanggang kaligtasan at tumanggap ng makalangit na gantimpala. Tuloy-tuloy naman ang pagdating ng mga deboto sa Quiapo Church upang magbigay pugay kay Pope Francis. Ang ilang nakausap ko hindi napigilang maging emosyonal nang marinig ang balita ng kanyang pagpanaw. Ang ilan sa kanila, personal pang nakasalamuha si Pope Francis noong kanyang pagbisita sa Pilipinas noong 2015. Aniya, hindi nila malilimutan ang kapaitang ipinamalas ng Santo Papa. Bok.
Iwan, parang ang daming bulaklak dyan sa may altar. Yan ba yan, para kay Pope Francis o dati na nandyan yan?
Kasama ka dyan, Bok, no? Itong kay Pope Francis, makikita natin yung larawan niya ay talagang nakabalot na itong kulay purple na tela, no? Ito kasi parang sinisimbolo nung pagluksa, no? Kaya nga explanation sa atin kanina nung isang lay minister dito na ginagamit talaga itong purple na tela nito during Lent, no? So kasama na yon sa sorrow na ipinapakita. Itong mga bulaklak naman, Bok, no? Madalas naman, marami naman bulaklak na kadalasan nakalagay dyan sa altar dahil talaga yung pinupuntahan ng mga tao. Pero yung isa talaga sa pinakapansin-pansin dito sa altar, ito nga talagang iniwan na larawan ni Pope Francis simula kahapon yan.
Dagdag ko naman.
Iba na nung balak nila dyan, araw-araw bang magkakaroon ng mass for him? Kasi meron din palang pasyam eh. Kahit sa Vatican, meron silang 9 days na yung prayers for the departed. Gagawin din ba yan dyan sa simbahan?
Tuloy-tuloy yung every hour na misa dito sa Quiapo, no? And karamihan dito is talagang dedicated dito nga kay Pope Francis. Isa ngayon dun sa talagang binago nila sa misa is isiningit nila itong bagong katagan para na inalay ito nga sa Pandalangin Bayan, no? Pinago nila yung isang parte doon at talagang i-dedicate nila yan para kay Pope Francis. So every mass, yan yung binabanggit tuwing binabanggit itong Panalangin Bayan. At sa mga oras na to, no, tuloy-tuloy yung kanilang pagbibigay pugay at pagbibigay ng suporta dito nga kay Pope Francis.
Okay, maraming salamat for that, mobile journalist Evan Trinque mula dyan sa Minor Basilica ng Quiapo.
Thank you, Evan.
Thank you, Evan. Pope Francis holds a special place in the hearts of Filipinos. Remember his unforgettable visit to the Philippines a decade ago. Let's watch this.
A decade has passed since Pope Francis visited the Philippines. When his plane landed on January 15, 2015, he chose the open-air Pope Mobile over a bulletproof ride. He toured the streets of Manila, greeted by thousands of Filipinos who fondly called him Lolo Kiko. Pope Francis is the third pontiff to visit the country following Pope Paul VI and Pope John Paul II. As part of his 5-day visit, he stopped by Malacanang and celebrated Mass at the Manila Cathedral just like his predecessors. The pontiff also addressed Filipino families in Pasay.
I remember my family, my father, my mother, my grandfather's mother. Today I rest with you.
But one of the most unforgettable moments was his visit to Tacloban. Despite the storm, the Taclobanons gave him a warm, heartfelt welcome. He celebrated Mass for the victims of Typhoon Yolanda and, in an emotional moment, set aside his prepared speech. He also visited Ground Zero in Palo Leyte, where the devastation of Yolanda was felt most.
When I saw from Rome that catastrophe,
Sentí que tenía que estar aquí.
I felt that I had to be here.
Que Jesús no defrauda.
And he never lets us down.
After Tacloban, Pope Francis returned to Manila to visit the University of Santo Tomas, where thousands of youth were eagerly waiting. A former street child asked the Pope why bad things happen to children.
Bakit po pumapayag ang Diyos na may ganitong nangyayari? Kahit walang kasalanan ang mga bata. At bakit kaunti lang ang mga taong tumutulong sa amin?
The Pope was caught off guard by the question.
the great question of why so many children suffer, she did this crying.
Y la gran respuesta que podemos hacer todos nosotros
And the response that we can make today is
aprender a llorar.
let us really learn how to weep, how to cry.
The Pope concluded his visit with a historic mass at the Carino Grandstand. Even under the rain, 6 million Filipinos came, marking the largest people gathering in history. It was truly a once-in-a-lifetime experience to be visited by the Pope. The mercy and compassion that Pope Francis shared with us is something we will never forget, even after his passing. For News 5, Mon Gualvez, we are One News.
And let's now check in with mobile journalist Amy Atienza for the latest from Caloocan Parish. Amy, can you hear us? Okay, I guess we'll come back.
Naputol yata.
Yeah. Okay, Amy, can you hear us now?
Yes, hello?
There you go.
Hello?
Yes, Amy, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Yes, nandito tayo ngayon sa San Roque Cathedral Parish kung saan kaninang bandang alas 12 ng tanghali nagkaroon ng misa sa pangunguna ni CBCP President Father Pablo Virgilio Cardinal David. At kanina nga napakaganda na naging homily niya kasi umikot ito sa mga luha. Kasi sabi niya nga, weep if you must. Pero may mga pagkakataon dito talaga na pwede kang lumuha dahil sa kasiyahan. At yun nga daw yung gusto ni Pope Francis din na maalala natin ang buhay niya bilang masaya, na may compassion para sa mga nakabababa. At yun nga, patuloy lang ang kanyang paalala para sa mga nalungkot, pati na rin sa mga nadismaya sa pagpanaw ni Pope Francis, na patuloy lang din ang pagdadasal at kung maaari nga daw ay bumisita rin dito sa San Roque Cathedral Parish para magsimbi ng kandila. Pero yun nga din, kung makikita natin yung sitwasyon ngayon, kahit wala masyadong tao ngayon dito sa loob ng simbahan, namumuo na yung traffic dahil magkakaroon din ng novena mamayang 5 p.m. yan dito sa San Roque para naman sa Easter Tuesday.
Amy, we know na si Caloocan Bishop Ambo David, Cardinal Ambo David, who is also the president of the CBCP, Catholic Bishops Conference of the Philippines, is expected to fly to Rome this week to, of course, he's one of the eligible cardinal electors, no? May nabanggit ba siya during his homily or even afterwards after the mass about this?
After the mass, actually nakapanayam niya yung mga media at sabi niya, ngayon nagkakaroon na sila ng preparations, inaayos niya na nga yung papeles para makapunta na siya ng Roma and hopefully by Friday daw ay makapunta na nga siya, makalipat na siya, papunta ng Rome. At yun nga, very excited siya kasi makikita niya at makakasama siya sa retreat sa Conclave na mangyayari. First time niya ito sa kanyang buhay. So, abangan natin kung ano pa yung mangyayari and hopefully yun nga, by Friday, makapunta na siya sa Rome.
Amy, ang sabi nila, they want the ring, yung CBCP gusto ringing of the bells ng mga simbahan eh. Ilang beses siyang niriringan? Every hour ba? Every 30 minutes?
Kahapon, nagsimula yan. Pero ngayon, wala pa naman masyado nangyayari na ringing of the bells. Actually, pagpunta pa rin natin ito ng umaga, wala namang ringing of the bells na nangyari. Pero mamayang 5 p.m., mag-anticipate na naman yan every 30 minutes magre-ring yung bell para nga dun sa mga dadalo na rin at para maalala nga si Pope Francis dito sa Caloocan.
Okay. Maraming salamat. That was mobile journalist Amy Atienza reporting live from Caloocan City.
Thank you, Amy.
You are watching Storycon on One News. This is the special coverage on the death of Pope Francis. We just need to take a very quick break right now. We'll be right back. Stay with us. welcome back. This is the special coverage of the death of Pope Francis by Storycon. And right now you're looking at the first images that we got out of the Vatican of Pope Francis lying inside a wooden coffin. As per his last will, he was given a single coffin made of wood and zinc. Traditionally, kasi it's a customary 3 interlocking coffins made of oak, cypress, and lead. But Pope Francis chose a single coffin made of wood and zinc. He also asked that he be buried not at St. Peter's Basilica, which is where popes are traditionally buried, but rather in the Santa Maria Maggiore Basilica, or St. Mary Major Basilica, to which he has a devotion. And he also requested that he not be put up on a platform or what's known as a catafalque. He wanted the rites very simple and not a lot of the customary
pomp and pageantry
around the service.
Those, by tradition, those 3 interlocking coffins, may symbolism din yun eh. Cypress, I think, symbolizing, simplicity.
Oak is...
Then followed by lead, because it's durable. And after, before they seal the lead with the solder, they put in some important documents that the Pope then had signed when he was still in charge. And after that, I'm not really sure if it's elm or oak, but one of those, the final wooden casket is known for being, I think, one of the more expensive woods in Europe at the time. So it's parang to give a sense of majesty
honor.
And
yeah,
honor.
the majesty.
Ano bang tawag sa oak or cypress sa Filipino, sa Tagalog?
Alam eh, ano ba?
Para makarelate sa ating mga tao. Di ba yung mga...
Oo.
Anong kwan? Di ko alam eh.
Hindi ko alam eh. Ang nagsasalta po, yung parang galing sa ilalim ng lupa. Kung merong Papa Billy, tama ba yung pronunciation ng Papa Billy? Kung may Papa Billy, ito si Papa Bol, ating si Tito Ronald Llamas.
Ronald Llamas, a resident political pundit, joining us for the second hour of Storycon. And also, we still have, of course, Ami Pamintuan, Editor-in-Chief of the Philippine Star via Zoom.
Ang tawag sa akin noon, OPAPA.
Ano, Papa?
Office of the Political Advisor
pala.
for Political Affairs.
Tama,
OPAPA.
Si Tito Ronald kanina may kinikwento eh. May kausap siyang isang Cardinal ng Pilipinas.
Sige, kwento mo, malakas.
Hindi ko alam kung payag siya, pero...
Hindi
naman sinabi off the record. Kausap ko kagabi si Cardinal Cardinal Ambo. David, no? Kinondole ko siya, tapos napag-usapan namin si Pope. Sabi nga niya, una, naiiba itong Pope na ito. Naiiba in terms of reform, in terms of humility, no, in terms of inclusivity. Yun yung bahagi ng kanyang legacy. Pero at the same time, may personal siyang relasyon kay Pope dahil nung tinetreten siya ni Digong dati, at tinawag siyang magnanakaw ng prutas at drug peddler, then naglalakad siya sa kanyang sa diocese paggabi. At may not so veiled threat laban sa kanya. No? Bakit daw hindi patayin yung mga bishops na nagkikriticize sa Tokhang? No? Ay kinuwan siya. Kinuusap siya ni Pope Francis. Ang sabi sa kanya, hinawakan siya sa braso. Sabi sa kanya ay huwag kang mag-alala. No? We're watching over you. No? Poprotektahan ka namin. No? Basically, saying na yung Pope ay behind him dito sa mga threats ni Digong, no? At ikalawa, sabi rin niya, yung pagkamatay ni Pope Francis, para siyang namatayan for the second time ng isang ama, no? Yung father niya ni Cardinal Ambo ay isang piskal. Siya yung piskal doon sa Plaza Miranda bombing, no? Ang kapatid niya, yung panganay, ay si Randy David. Si Ambo yata, second to the last. 13 sila magkakapatid.
13?
From Betis, Pampanga. No, ayun, nakapagkwentuhan lang namin.
But itong pictures that we're running right now is of Cardinal Ambo, Pablo Virgilio David, in case people don't know. presiding over Mass kanina sa Caloocan Church. And of course, he is also the president of the CBCP. And he is expected to fly to Rome.
To fly?
Yes,
By
yes,
Friday.
yes.
By Friday daw, sabi ng
Yes.
reporter namin. Because he is one of the 135 Cardinal electors who will be choosing the next pontiff.
Most people have forgotten yung kwentong yan, yung pagbanat ni Duterte doon sa...
Natawa ko rin nagnanakaw ng prutas. Yung mga inaalay doon.
Kahit yung pagbisita ni remember, yung pagbisita mismo ni Pope, nagmura din nun si
minura,
Digong.
piniay.
Kasi na-traffic daw siya.
Piniay.
Di ba?
Oo.
Na-traffic siya
Umuwi na daw at wag nang bumalik.
Piniay niya si Pope mismo.
At wag na daw
Kasi
bumalik.
nagka-traffic daw siya.
Parang ibang mundo na, no?
Ibang mundo. Pero ngayon nagdadasal sila sa...
May statement si BP Sara about the death of the Pope. May statement siya. Sabi niya, si Pope daw is a humble and dedicated disciple of God who taught us to be compassionate, forgiving, and merciful in a world poisoned by social inequities, hate, greed, and wars. Yan
May aha no? May aha.
Anong gusto palabasin namin?
Tsaka sa The Hague, puro yung kanila doon, prayer. Nakita mo, Ami? Puro dasal nila ron May candlelight prayer pa nga Kaya baka naman
nagbago na.
Nagbalik loob.
Baka yung mga anak, prayerful yung
Labs
mga
Catholic
tatay lang,
dati.
hindi, agnostic siya, hindi ba? Self-proclaimed agnostic si Digong.
Binura nga niya yung Diyos, di ba? Di ba, tinawag niya stupid?
Although nag-nuancing siya dyan sa pagmumuhan niya sa Diyos.
That word again, nag-nuancing.
Parang yung tokhang, may nuancing.
May nuancing
teka,
yan.
ipasok natin si Merimon. Si Merimon's waiting. Merimon Reyes, are you there?
Yes. Kanina pa siya dyan
Ay, Merimon. Nagdasal ka na ba, Merimon?
Magandang hapon sa inyo. Yes, at kaninang umaga na puno ng pagdalamhati dito sa Manila Cathedral kasi lalong-lalo na pagdating doon sa homily. Ito kasing misa today na pinreside ni Manila Archbishop Jose Cardinal Albin Cula ay para sa eternal repose ni Pope Francis o ni Lolo Kiko nga na tulad na tinatawag natin sa kanya. Kanina sa kanyang homilia, isa sa pinaka-tumatak na gusto niya nga raw na patuloy na maalala sa puso't isipan ng mga Pilipino ay yung pagiging mapagpakumbaba ni Pope Francis, yung pagmamahal niya raw sa mga tao na walang pinipili at ang magsilbing inspirasyon daw siya na bagaman ito nga hindi raw magandang balita nga na supposedly masaya raw dapat kasi nga Easter Sunday, lumipas, today is Easter Tuesday, pero yung passing ni Pope Francis naging malungkot talaga ito para sa nakararami. Pero aside from that, kahapon din kasi pinaingay yung kampana dito sa Manila Cathedral for around 12 to 13 minutes to honor yung papacy ni Pope Francis. Pero ngayon, so far dito sa likuran ko, sa Christ the King Chapel, nag-set up din sila ng kandelarya para sa mga gustong magsindi, magtirik ng kanilang kandila o gustong mag-alay ng kanilang dasal at dalangin para kay Pope Francis. Until 7 o'clock p.m., mananatiling bukas ang Manila Cathedral.
Okay, eternal repose para
may malaking bell dyan sa katabi ng cathedral, doon sa baba, di ba? Yun ba yung pinatunog nila?
Yes, Miss Ami, parang ang pinatunog is yung kampanang maliit yung nandito sa isang part ng Manila Cathedral. Pero for today, if we're going to check, parang by the hour lang din yung pinakapagpapatunog nila ng kampana. Unlike kahapon na they really gave 12 to 13 minutes of continuous ringing. Pero ngayon parang usual programming pa rin siya na every few hours nagkakaroon ng pag-ring ng kanilang kampana. Pero eto quick, habang may signal pa tayo, ito yung sinasabi ko sa Christ the King Chapel sa loob ng Manila Cathedral, kung saan ka maaaring nga magtirik ng kandila yung mga gusto mag-alay ng kanilang dasal for the eternal repose of Pope Francis. And until 7 o'clock p.m. pwede pa naman pumunta dito ang ating mga kapatid hanggang sa mga susunod pang araw.
Okay, eternal repose kasi, perhaps a lot of Catholics don't remember this, pero Catholic teaching says na when you die, no matter how good you are, you don't go straight to heaven You pass through purgatory, not unless you're Mama Mary. Diba? Tama, Meron, UST ka, di ba?
Yes,
Alam mo yan.
yes, tama. And ang pinaka-practice pa nga dito ng mga kapatid nating Katoliko, ipagdasal daw ang mga yumao para mas masiguro na meron talaga silang pagkakataon na makatawid sa kabilang buhay. O sinasabi nga natin na langit. At hindi daw sila mananatili doon sa pagitan
ng sinasabing impyerno o kaya naman ng kalangitan,
Or
yung sa
purgatory.
gitna, yung purgatory.
Pero kung pupunta ka ng impyerno, wala nang gitna.
Wala nang
Diretso na.
Wala nang stop yun.
Diretso na.
Diretso laglag ka na doon. Nagahanda ka na ba? Okay. Maraming salamat. Mobile journalist Marymon Reyes.
Thank you, Mary Mon.
Naalala ko yung isa sa pinaka-dramatic images ni Pope, yung COVID. Nandun siya sa St. Peter's Square, sa gitna ng ulan, mag-isa siya, nagdadasal siya. No? Nagdadasal
I
siya.
saw that image.
Diba?
May mga nagre-repost ng image na yan ngayon.
Very powerful yun. During COVID, na yung buong mundo parang ninenervyos, kinakabahan. Andun siya, providing comfort dun sa mga kinakabahan, dun sa mga nag-iisa sa mga bahay, katulad ko, ng panahon na
Sabi
yun.
nila,
Nag-iisa sa bahay. Sige na nga, huwag natin. Let's not contradict.
Wala naniniwala sa iyo, Ronald.
Parang si Ami, tinatawanan ako.
Wala naniwala sa iyo.
wala naniniwala sa iyo eh. So wait lang, I just have to mention si Cardinal Jose Advincula is also one of the 3 eligible cardinal electors. So there are 5 cardinals in the Philippines. 3 are eligible to vote. During the conclave, that's Cardinal Tagle, Luis Antonio or Chito Tagle, Cardinal Jose Advincula, and Cardinal Pablo Virgilio Ambo David. Yung dalawang ineligible, because they're over 80 years old, are Cardinals Orlando Quevedo and Gaudencio Rosales. So, yun yung the number of cardinals that we have.
Diyan yata si Father Flavi.
Okay.
Yes,
Let's
nandiyan na.
bring in our next guest. We have Father Flavi Villanueva.
Hi, Father.
Hi,
Magandang
Father.
hapon. Thank you for
Hi,
joining us.
Father.
Magandang hapon,
Father. Long time no see.
Always good
Long
to have you,
time.
Father,
Long time.
from the Society of the Divine Word. Father, well, actually, hiniling kasi namin, we've been talking to so many priests, especially those in the Vatican. But sabi ko kanina, let's talk to a priest who can bring it all down to earth. Sa saltang kalye. Kasi naman ginawa ni Pope Francis Di ba? He made the church more tangible. He made the accessible to ordinary people, not just to people who are studying philosophy or theology and all that. Yeah, bring the church to the people so that people can relate to the church. And that's why we figured let's
So,
talk
ibig mo
about
sabihin, si Father Flavi ay tambay sa kanto. Geologs. Pero sa totoong buhay
May
naman,
masapil,
totoong buhay naman, bago naging pari si Father Flavi, tambay talaga yan.
Talaga ha?
Anyway, Father, so we're bringing Father, let me start off with this. Anong takeaway natin dito sa mga pangyayari? I mean, of course, we're all in mourning, pero at the same time, siguro, we also want to look, he is a Pope of hope, sabi nga nila. So, what should we take away from this?
One to take away from this would be
Nako,
Father.
Father, medyo choppy po.
Mukha na sa kotse. Kaya,
Oo. Father,
Father,
we're
can we call you again?
gonna call
Mobile yata kasi siya.
we're gonna call you again,
He's on the
Father.
move.
Yes, Father. Can we call you again, Father? Or if not, we can just call his phone para
he
wala
has been
hindi marinig.
Sorry, Father. We can't understand you. We'll have to call you again,
Nagbe-break
Father.
up siya. He's on the move.
Hello?
Ba't si Congresswoman Luis Trola, kahit nasa kotse, naririnig? Pero siguro siyang pando, no?
Hello?
Starlink.
Umihigop ng signal.
Father,
May sariling
nagbe-break up po
satellite.
kasi kayo
Yes, Father.
Nagbe-break up
Father,
po kayo.
if you don't mind, we'll call you again right now. Please drop the line.
We'll call you again.
Right now.
Kagabi, nung nagsimula ako sa...
O yan, lumabas siya ng kotse.
Kagabi, nagsimula ako sa interview, nakasa kotse rin ako Sabi ko, feeling Congresswoman Luis Troco.
Parating
Father.
Kaya lumabas si Father sa kotse, pumasok sa ano.
Ayan.
Pumasok sa ano.
Father, kamusta ang audio natin?
I guess,
Yeah, hello, check.
Better.
yes, okay na.
Better.
Okay na.
Check.
Sige,
Okay.
Father. Go, Father.
Yeah.
Okay, ayan na, okay na.
My takeaway from this would be of two things. Una ay he's a pope of a lot of first. Meaning to say, madami siyang sinimulan na mga bagay-bagay na bukod tanging siya ang nagsimula. Isa doon ay yung paglubog niya sa masa, yung paglubog niya at pag-abot niya sa mahirap, yung pag-abot niya sa mga marginalized. And with that, those are the things that I have, ito, tama-tama, ano? This was an inspiration of the Pope. This painting, and the very center that we started that provides showers and buffet for the poorest of the poor, particularly the homeless, is an inspiration of him. This is a painting that was inspired by the Pope na naririto ngayon sa Tayuman Center, as a Tayuman Catholic Trade Building. And my inspiration in 2014 was when he opened the showers himself for the homeless. So doon makikita natin yung theology niya, hindi lang sa isip, hindi lutang, but something that we could say in the Gospels, the Word became flesh and made His dwelling among us. And with that, I also had a personal encounter with the Pope, and doon kakaiba, because it was around 2, 3, 4 minutes of ito eksakto yung dating ko sa office. This is the photo that I had with him. Inabot ko po sa kanya itong Kristo sa Kariton. It's a sculpture that I designed, and pinagawa natin sa isang artist yung molde. And then ginagawa na po ng mga homeless mismo. And when I offered this to him, he engaged me into a conversation. And that conversation, naku, Diyos ko, sabi ko, nag-Italiano siya, sabi ko, I can only speak Italiano, parang si Paring Bert. So, talaga I had to harness everything. And the first question he asked, what is this? So sabi ko, para ako nataranta, bigla, ang lamig-lamig, bigla ako nakaramdam ng init. He asked me, what is this? So I had to explain it to him that it symbolizes Christ in the cart, and then it's done by the homeless. It reflects the plight of the homeless and the EGK widows that we have been providing care to. And then the next question that he asked me, what else does it symbolize? Sabi ko, Diyos ko, parang ano to, parang examination. Sabi ko, it's, if you would look at it, your dear Pope, there's a bread in the middle. And it symbolizes and asks the question, who gives the bread to whom? Meron tinapay na ibinibigay.
Okay.
O nag-aabutan sila. And the Pope was wide-eyed when he saw you look at the smile, di ba? And then the last question that really brought me to my knees was, is this for me? Ay, sabi ko, Diyos ko, parang talaga hindi naintindihan yung Tagalog ko o yung Italiano o yung English ko. Dahil, I mean, after all the explanation, and I handed it to him as a gift, at the end of the day, he asked, is this for me? Yes. Di sinabi ko, doon ako napaluhod, and then I asked for his blessing, and ask also to bless the EGK victims in the Philippines. And he did give it with a smile. Opo.
Father, anong reaction niya nung nabanggit niya yung mga EJK?
Oo nga eh. And did you...
We are praying. We are praying.
You had to explain to him ba anong ibig sabihin ni EJK? Because EJK is of course...
These are the victims of... I'm trying to recall, but I was careful also to make it simple. Drug war victims in the Philippines.
Kasi 2015 yan, father eh. Hindi pa... Wala pa sa posisyon si Duterte.
Yeah,
so
this meeting
masyadong malaking issue at that time eh.
Opo, but this meeting took place in 2022.
Okay. This one.
Okay.
2022.
This was a meeting
yung sa ano yung iba niyong kuha sa ano yun, Catholic trade. Meron din ba kayong mga program for mga, dyan ako lumaki, Marami diyang mga drug dealer lang. Kilala ko yung ibang ano dyan, yung drug dealer. Saka maraming drug addict. Meron din ba kayong program for drug rehab and yung drug-related programs?
Yes po. I'm working also with Sanlakbay, the community drug-based program of the Archdiocese of Manila, and we're working hand in hand to help also the drug addicts. And kasama po si Father Bobby de la Cruz.
At may isa pang sombrero, si Father Flaby. Siya yung isa sa founder at leader ng People's Impeachment Movement.
Talagang may flagging.
Pinag-uusapan kasi yung mga sombrero. Kaya nabanggit ko.
Akala ko red cap.
Afterthought lang. Afterthought.
Siguro, dala na rin ng maganda, dala na rin ng Santo Papa na kapag tumaya ka sa mga mahihirap, tatanungin mo rin yung tanong bakit sila mahirap? And if it's about the system, he's not afraid to call the attention of anyone who he believes na nagiging sanhi para sa kahirapan ng iba. And I think that I would draw courage from his approach of being holistic in providing care to those living in the margins.
Naalala ko nga yung statement niya, Father, nung binanatan niya yung unfettered
Kasi
capitalism.
Latin America, isa yan sa
sabi niya,
isa yan sa mga centers ng problema sa mundo ng drugs. Do you ever say anything about it?
Ang tawag niya sa unfettered capitalism ay the dung of the devil.
I remember that. He spoke out.
Niya sa
Pero
neoliberalism.
sa drugs
He spoke out against.
Nagsalita ba siya about it?
Unfortunately, Ami, if not very minimal, we did as far as my memory is correct, pass 3 requests for the Pope to mention, even in his regular prayers for the faithful, that is mentioned on a monthly basis. Pero unfortunately, for some reason, hindi po nababanggit. The closest would be the interaction and the support that he gave Bishop now Cardinal Ambo, as well as Archbishop Sok. Yun po ang mga doon po nagpapaabot ng mensahe. And then the current who's yung representative niya, ang kanyang emissary sa nuncio,
the
papal nuncio also, when he came to the center, sinabi niya, pinangako niya, I will tell the Pope personally about the plight. Kasi nakinig po ang nuncio Brown ng mga kwento ng biktima. And he was really moved by it. And sabi niya, I will personally bring this encounter with me to him.
Kinuwento nga namin kanina, Father, yung nung tinetreten si Bishop Ambo, ni Digong, na pinatawag siya ng Pope at sinabi sa kanya na huwag mag-alala dahil
nanonood.
We are watching.
We're watching over you. Yung ganon. Dahil hindi lang siya tinreten with not so veiled threat ng death, kung hindi tinawag din siya magnanakaw ng prutas at drug peddler. Naalala niyo yun, Father?
Actually, I looked up the exact quote. Sabi ni Duterte, that was in 2018. Sabi niya, these bishops kill them all. They're useless fools. All they do is criticize. Yan yung speech.
At alam ko, nakasuhan yata si Father Ambo with Bishop Ambo with
sedition.
Sedition at saka si
magkakasama po kami nun.
Kasama kayo, kinasuhan ng kidnapping. Kidnapper daw kayo, Father Flaby, at saka si Senator Risa Ontiveros,
kasama
si family Edlingaw, pwede kaming kidnapper, pero kayo hindi ko maiisip na kidnapper Tsaka si Risa, tsaka si Bishop Ambo, baka si Ami pwede.
Pero kumusta na yung case niyo yan, Father? Kumusta na siya?
Absulto na po last year. we were acquitted
Lahat, no?
of false
Lahat, ano?
charges. Yes po. Yes,
Kasama
Abby.
kasama pala si Father sa sedition charges. Okay. Buti naman na na-drop na.
Parang talagang
Tuloy po
seditious
natin
si Father.
ang Santo
Parang
Papa na to.
seditious, no?
And yun din papalit. Very crucial po.
Oo. Yes. Father.
Yung peace, yung unity,
Yes.
and even yung pagtuturo ng ebanghelyo na nakakaabot sa laylayan.
Okay. We'll leave that there for now. Thank you so much for your time today, Father Flavi
Salamat po.
Villanueva.
Thank you, Father.
of the Society
Salamat,
of the
Father.
Divine Word,
Yes, Father.
SVD. You're watching the special coverage on the death of Pope Francis. We just need to take a very quick break. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Pope Francis was a messenger of hope, humility, and humanity. He was a transcendent voice for peace, human dignity, and social justice. He leaves behind a legacy of faith, service, and compassion for all, especially those on the margins of life or trapped by the horrors of conflict. Many of us find great meaning in his final Easter message, delivered just yesterday. He appealed for us not to yield, as he called it, to the logic of fear. Instead, he urged the world to invest in what he referred to as the weapons of peace, to help the most vulnerable, to fight hunger, to advance development. Our divided and discordant world will be a much better place if we follow his example of unity and mutual understanding in our own actions.
Welcome back to the
Storycon, the Story
Storycon
Conference. I'm Ed Lingang.
And I'm Regina Lay. This is the continuing coverage on the passing of Pope Francis. Still with us, of course, Ami Pomintuan of the Philippine Star and Ronald Llamas, a resident political partner.
Whatever you heard kanina, if anything at all, that was AI. Hindi po yun.
May adyan provocateur di kasi dito, kaya napilitan ako magsalita.
Okay. Kasama natin, of course, si Ami Pomintuan. Nabagit mo na. Okay. Kasama natin ngayon si Patrick Paes.
Provocateur.
Anong pangwento ni Bishop Ambo? Ni Cardinal Ambo?
Basta yun, papunta siya ron. At ayun nga, gulping-gulpi si... ito, off the record na. No?
Pero sasabihin din niya.
Hindi, off the record. Pero,
tayo na naman.
sabihin, may massive propaganda operation labang kay Cardinal Tagle. Kaya i-google mo yung pangalan niya.
Sinabi mo na
Puro negative eh. No? Yun yung, pero ito kasi, ako lang siya sabi, ito kasi ay...
Galing sa kanya.
Sinabi na niya kahapon actually. Oo.
So yung kinikwento sa amin, off the record pala yun. Dati po ang kinikwento.
Hindi, dahil kung galing sa akin, hindi off the record. Pero kung galing sa iba, lalo na yung head ng Catholic Church, yun off the record yun.
And may,
saka ayaw kasi nila na pinag-uusapan ngayon, itong mga succession, etc. Parang, parang hindi maganda eh.
Sabi dyan sa Vatican, ayaw nila na hinahype kahit sino actually eh.
Kaya hindi magpapa-interview yung mga yan.
Kahit may ganyan na negative, mas whether positive or negative, ayaw nila yung ganon.
Kaya
may black ops against Cardinal Tagle.
Hindi, more than a year ago pa.
He's one of 12 eh. Meron ngang
ang report dati, di ba? Kaya daw maraming inappoint si Pope Francis na mga cardinal para medyo dumami yung kakampi niya to push his, yun na nga, yung kanyang progressive agenda in the church.
Merong image going around na 12 leading contenders to become the next pope. 3 doon, only 3 from Asia. Yung si Cardinal Tagle, the Archbishop of in Myanmar, and yung isa from Sri Lanka. So, and amongst those 3, si Cardinal Tagle yung highest ranking kasi he was named the prefect of the congregation, of one of the congregations in the Vatican. So parang equivalent to that, equivalent of cabinet secretary rank yun within the
Actually, ang sinasabi
Vatican.
nilang papabol ay mga 5 lang. 5 lang. One from Asia, 2 from Africa, 2
The rest from Europe.
Yeah.
No?
So, at depende.
Napakalaking influence dito sa Pilipinas kung ang Pope magagaling dito sa bansa natin. I mean,
but
the
then-
impact on our politics.
But I also read somewhere na there are 2 things going against Cardinal Tagle. Number 1 is bata pa siya. They don't like very young candidates kasi
Hindi natin pag-uusapan ng
They
successor.
have to stay so long.
kasi they don't correct. They don't
Hindi
want
po
long
napapabili.
Not unless he resign.
they don't want long papacies.
Dahil
right?
nangyari
So-
yun kay Pope Wotila. No? Pope John Paul.
matagal.
Carol Wojtyla.
Na ang haba ng kanyang term.
Umabot pa ng 20
Dahil
years
kasi,
yun.
halos kasing edad siya ni Cardinal Tagle nung naging Pope siya.
Oo. So now apparently the Vatican generally doesn't like long papacy. So given that medyo bata pa si Cardinal Tagle, it's a point against him. And the second thing is bago lang siya sa College of Cardinals, right? So typically daw they like cardinals who have served for many years to become the next pontiff.
Our guest is already here on Zoom. Let's bring in Filipino Jesuit priest Father Albert Alejo. Father Alejo, welcome back to Storycon.
Sino yan?
Hi, Father.
Hi, Father.
Si Paring Bert.
Magandang hapon sa inyong lahat. Dito maganda yung araw, sikat ng araw dito sa Vatican.
Sa Vatican,
Vatican.
Father. Okay, akala ko nasa Hague.
Father,
Ayun ba yung costume niya sa likod? Ayun.
Hindi costume yan.
Ay, hindi. Kaya nga, di ba?
Sutana yan.
Sutana. Okay.
Ikaw talaga.
Di ba costume din ang tawag?
Hindi costume ang sutana.
Uniform.
Uniform na. Sige, uniform na nga. Huwag niyo kalimutan. Teka lang, bago niyo tanungin si Father. Kanya, anniversary ng kanyang pagiging pare.
Ay, kailan?
Kahapon.
Congratulations, Father.
Kahapon. Kaya congratulate mo
Father,
muna.
congratulations.
Naka 34 years na ako.
Yeah.
Na-ordain ho ako.
Okay. So yung pansit is on the way.
1991.
Father, nagpadala ba kayo ng pansit
Yung pansit
dito?
na is on the way already.
May pansit, may bibihon ba kayong pinadala? Tsaka, mamunlok na siopaw. Yung paborito namin eh.
Congratulations, Father.
Pagbalik
Father,
mo na
34
dito,
years ka na sa simbahan. Saan tayo papunta ngayon?
Hindi, sa
After
ordination
this
yan.
12 years of
Ordination.
reformist Pope. Saan papunta simbahan
Pero nung
ngayon?
nakasama ko si Father sa Artlet, sa UST, hindi pa siya pari noon, di ba, Father?
Ha?
Flame siya eh.
Binata pa ako nun. Binata pa
Miyembro
ako
siya
nun.
ng Flame,
Yung dyaryo.
namin sa College of Arts.
Gano'n kayo katagal na magkakilala?
Hindi, ako kasi high school eh. Siya fourth year college.
Paano totoo ba yun?
High school ako noon eh. First year high school, si Father fourth year college.
Baka baliktad yun. Pero saan tayo papunta, Father? Saan papunta simbahan ngayon? There's a lot of uncertainty actually.
Ang simbahan naman, sanay na sa ganyan. Dalang roller coaster madalas. Kuminsan meron ng mga papa na santo, meron namang iskandaloso. Ako, yung unang-unang pari na nakilala ko, iskandaloso. Pero pag nagtataas siya ng ostya, napapalood talaga ako. So, ang simbahan nasanay na rin sa ganyan. At ang pinakamasamang mangyayari ay kung halimbawa umunti na umunti o humina, hindi na kasing lakas ng Christendom nung dati, well, baka nga mas maganda yun. Purification din yun. Di ba? Oo. So, tignan natin. Hindi naman natin inaasahan na meron ganyang papa na very pastoral ang approach sa pagiging papa. Biro mo, 68 countries yung nabisita niya. Pero hindi lang by country yan. Yung mga sulok-sulok, yung mga bilangguan, yung mga refugees, yung mga unwed mothers, marami. Tapos katunayan, kahit na bago pa lang siyang Santo Papa noong 2015, nung nabalita niya nangyari sa Yolanda, talagang sinikap niya na makarating sa atin.
Parating dito.
Doon lang yata siya nakapagmisa na naka-kamote. Naka-raincoat at bumabagyo.
Actually, muntik Father, kung maalala nyo, muntik tamaan yung kanyang aeroplano. Dahil yung sumunod na aeroplano sa kanya, na bumalik sa Manila, muntik mag-crash. Dahil parang may tumama na malaking hangin. no? Nakasakay doon sila Executive Secretary Ochoa, etc. Si Armed Forces Chief of Staff Bautista. Muntik mag-crash, buti dumausdos sila sa runway. Magkasunod lang yun doon sa aeroplano ni Pope Francis.
So
Naalala
yun
ko yun.
ang espiritu ni Pope Francis na hindi siya nagkukulong. Katunayan, isang paborito niyang phrase ay yung Chiesa in Uscita, yung simbahang lumalabas. Ibig sabihin ng lumalabas, hindi palabas, hindi lang palabas lang, no? Kundi simbahang nagbubukas ng pinto. Sabi niya, buksan ang pinto ng simbahan para makapasok yung mga nasa labas. Tapos sabi niya, sandali, wrong. Correction. Buksan ang pinto at bintana ng simbahan, hindi lang para makapasok ang nasa labas, kundi yung mga nasa loob ay kailangang lumabas. Madungisan ka, maputikan ka, maulanan ka,
Get your boots on the ground.
ka, mabundol ka, magkaroon ka ng pasa, mabugbog ka. Sabi niya, mas gusto ko yung simbahan na bugbog, may pasa, may dungis, hindi yung posturang-postura, kaysa naman sa simbahang maputla dahil nagkulong lang sa magagaarang simbahan. Ang ganda, no?
In relation dyan, Father.
Tinutuon niya. Dahil kung mag-preach si Pope Francis, nagpipreach siya, nangangaral siya sa salita, sa gawa, at saka mumunting galaw. Yung ngiti, tapik, halik sa bata, akbay sa naka-wheelchair, ganon.
In relation dyan, Father, sa sinasabi nyo.
Maalala siya. Sabi ng iba,
in relation dyan, Father, sa sinasabi nyo, tsaka yung tanong ni
canonize o hindi, para sa akin, yung santo papa siya. Si Lolo Kiko.
Hindi, Father, in relation sa sinasabi nyo, at saka yung tanong ni Ami kanina, parang co-bodies, no?
Co-bodies.
Kahapon kasi may isang pari kaming kausap, tapos binabanggit niya si Maurice West, yung Shoes of the Fisherman. Tapos isa dun sa mahalagang phrase doon ay nung sinabi nung Pope dun sa libro, why did a perfect God chose such an imperfect institution like the church to send this message? No? Parang may ganong klaseng self-criticism madalas si Pope Francis Parang hindi niya tinitignan yung simbahan as a perfect institution. No? At yung imperfection ay medyo buhay sa kanyang mga sermon. No? Siguro in relation dyan na saan papunta ang simbahan ngayon?
Una-una, hindi naman lahat ng ginawa niya ay bago. May tinutuloy din siya. Hindi naman pwedeng isang papa ay totally against or different from the other pope. May tinutuloy siya. Nilakasan talaga niya yung pastoral. Tawag doon ay reform nga. Ngayon, ano yung direction ito? Yung iba kinakabahan na baka mamaya ang susunod na papa opposite niya.
Yes, Father.
Baka kung halimbawa binuksan niya yung mga kategorya natin, bukas siya ng mga bintana, niluwagan niya yung ating mga masisikip na takbo ng isip, baka mamaya ang kunin naman nilang mailig namang papa ay yung straight jacket, dalawa lang ang gender, mga ganyan, ano? So yung iba, ganyan ang kinakaba. Posibleng mangyari yan, pero sana hindi. Yung iba naman, sinasabi na siguro ang mapipiling papa ay yung itutuloy yung mga sinimulan ni Lolo Kiko. So, kung titignan mo naman yung mga kandidato, marami rin dyan na pastorally oriented na mga sinasabing mga kandidato. Yung galing sa Latin America, pati nga galing sa ibang parte ng Italia, marami rin dyan na may pastoral orientation. Kahit ngayon si Cardinal Parolin, siya, Secretary of State, pero ando doon siya sa mga pakikipag-usap sa iba't ibang reliyon, sa mga Muslim, mga ganyan, no? So, tignan natin. Hindi naman lahat ng sinimula ni Pope Francis ay mababago. Hindi naman siguro lahat ay sosobrahan, no? Pakiramdaman natin. Ang simbahan naman ay laging merong energy and structure. May structure kaya may permanence. Meron ding energy na kung minsan, kung tuyong-tuyo na yung structure, may lumilitaw ng mga mga sparks. May mga umuusbong ng mga bagong ideya at hindi mo rin alam kung saan nangyagaling. Pangalawa, wag naman nating asahan na lahat ng mga turo ay liderato manggagaling lang sa Santo Papa. May mga bagong kardinal na kung saan-saan kinuha ni Pope Francis. Iba-ibang sulok ng daigdig. Pangalawa, nakikita ko, lumalakas ang makilusan ng laiko. Palagay ko, sa aking palagaya, yung sinimulan ni Pope Francis na synodality, binuksan niya ang pinto para pakinggan yung iba't ibang sektor, sasamantalahin niya ng ibang mga sektor, lalo na mga laiko. At yun ang inaasahan ko at inihiling ko na huwag tayong umasa sa liderato ng isang papa, makikinig siya sa galaw din ng kilusan ng mga lay people. So, importante ito. Kasama na dyan ang kilusan ng mga kababaihan. Si Pope Francis, may mga nagtutulak sa kanya na, sige, mag-ordain ka na ng mga kababae. Sa ngayon, hindi pa pwede. Ngayon, may naisip siyang paraan. Sabi niya, maglalagay ako ng babae doon sa screening committee ng mga ginagawang obispo. So, nakaisip siya ng ganung paraan, ano? Nakaisip siya ng ganung paraan.
Okay.
Kaya sa palagi ko, yung susunod na papa, hindi niya pwedeng burahin lahat ng mga ginawang pagbabago. Hindi niya pwedeng isara lahat ng bintana na binuksan ni Pope Francis. Pero sana, mabantayan din natin ang kilos ng mga lay people. Palagi ko, malaki ang mga pagbabago na mangyayari dyan.
Okay. Father Bert Alejo, always a pleasure to have you on board. Maraming salamat. That was Filipino Jesuit priest Father Albert, Paring Bert Alejo.
Paring Bert.
Father.
Thank you, Father.
See
Ingat
you,
po palate.
See you soon,
Maraming
Father.
salamat. Saludo po sa inyo.
Okay. Thank you so much for joining Storycon today. This was our special coverage on the death of Pope Francis. We're going to leave you with pictures of the Pope lying in his coffin and in the Vatican. These are not live. Nakuha natin to about an hour ago. These are the first pictures of the Pope inside his wooden coffin at the Vatican. Thanks for joining Storycon today. Ami Pamintuan, Editor-in-Chief of the Philippine Star, Ronald Llamas, our resident political pundit. Join us again tomorrow, 4 p.m. for Storycon. I'm Regina Lay.
I'm Ed Lingao. We are One News, all sides, all the time.